Hello and welcome to A Life of Creation. My name is Chad and I am the host of this channel. If you like what you've seen so far, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification button so you know when I release new videos. Today we are talking to Jason Jensen, who is a set designer and a prop stylist. I've worked with him a lot over the years and he's a cool guy. So let's hear his story. Just use an overlay. Well, I'm here with Jason Jensen, a prop stylist and set designer, and he is going to give us a little insight into what he does and why he does it and how he does it and whatever else he wants to tell us.
Yeah, I mean, I do probably more prop styling and set design these days, and that's just more of a happenstance than a personal choice. Um, I think um, obviously you always kind of want to follow as a um, career path whatever is going to pay you. So that's certainly a motivating factor in that kind of distinction. Um, but I think it's also just kind of have learned my strengths, and I didn't go, I didn't come to this job through a traditional route. I didn't go to art school. I didn't study to do this. I know people that did, or they went to theater school and they studied set design. They kind of have that strong um, um, kind of core coming at it from an artistic kind of place. I kind of went the the hard road, which is um, learning on the job. I worked for other designers and other stylists for a long time. Um, I think I started doing this in 2006, so it's been almost 20 years. I was an assistant for a long time and got to work with really talented people. And so I think a lot of the people that I work with did have backgrounds that came from kind of more of a traditional place. And that helped me kind of build a good core of understanding the nature of the work, even if maybe I didn't have the fundamentals of an education in it. Um, and the benefit of that is that I know the job very well, um, from a place of doing it repetitively. Um, the downside, of course, is that you kind of have to catch up and kind of learn a lot of that that um, educational side and theory side of it, on your own, and that can be a little more challenging depending on you know how you learn and who you are. Um, because that's just such a if you're working all the time, it's so hard to kind of go back to say, oh, let me go read about color theory at 9 o'clock at night, or
Right.
watch YouTube videos about the way that light works and things like that. But I would say that it's certainly a path. Um, I don't know whether one is better than the other. Um, I just know that it's the path that I chose to take, and it's brought me to here at this point. Um, but I mean, maybe someone else who kind of has more of a traditional background could say whether it's easier, or harder. I think, um, you kind of always can look in hindsight and say, oh, you could do this or that, and maybe that would have made things a little more more smooth in your process of coming up. But I think when you're kind of in that moment, you kind of just um, you just have to figure things out on your own,
Right.
you know. And I was really lucky that I worked with people who kind of um, I worked for people that kind of um, had strong senses of how to do things in a good, efficient, and artistic way. And I was really fortunate to have that experience.
Yeah. I mean, I went to college for 4 years and studied photo communication. So I learned some photo stuff, but it was like photojournalism.
Right.
But I learned so much more by just working with a photographer after college.
Yeah.
So I think you may have just skipped the like tedious assignments that you don't care about and you just went straight to doing the job.
I mean, I think about that somewhat frequently though. And I think about that and I did skip that part of it, but I think about it. There is something John Waters says like you have to have good taste to have bad taste. His whole thing is, he's the king of bad taste. But he's like you can't master that unless you have good taste. And I think that kind of applies in this situation. To bend the rules or to break the rules to make things a little more interesting, you kind of have to know the rules.
Right. Yeah.
And when you don't kind of have that core of it, at least you kind of it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you see things in a completely different way that other people may not see them.
Right.
But then sometimes you go, well, that doesn't look right. And you're like, why doesn't that look right? And you go, oh, right. Because this very simple theory of things tells you, like, well, there's squares and
Right.
quadrants. Right, of course. Um, so I do think that, you probably learn a lot more just by doing the practice of the thing, at least when it comes to the commercial aspect of what I do. And maybe that's a distinction to make also, is that I am purely a commercial prop stylist. You
Right.
know, I'm not I I'm not necessarily what I would consider like an artist in the sense of the job. I
Right.
think
Right.
that there are people that are miles ahead of me in terms of like creativity, and I see things that they do and I go, "Oh my gosh, that's stunning,"
Right.
and
Yeah.
I think of myself as kind of more like a gun for hire. And it's not to be self-deprecating, it's more just in the sense of like that's where my strengths lie.
Right.
Um,
Well, it's funny because I feel like the more I talk to people, the more people are like, yeah, I'm not an artist. I know what I can do and I do it kind of a thing. No one feels like they're creative, but even in the
yeah,
creative field,
yeah. I mean, it's called a creative field, but I feel I mean, intensely commercial in everything
right,
that I do. Just because it's motivated by, I mean, money. I mean, and it's not to say like in like a greedy sense, but um
the
it's
living,
pretty rare these days where you get to do things purely for like the artistic
right,
sense of it, I think there are still opportunities for that, but they're just a lot less than they used to be.
right,
Um, where it's kind of, hey, here's some money, just go make something really interesting and cool.
right,
Um, and so when I say that I'm just commercial, I guess I mean it in the sense of, I'm my creativity is really just motivated by trying to make it the best for whatever the particular project is.
right. And
Um,
I think I think that's really a skill in itself to be able to, be creative, even if it's not a passion project. You can kind of still tap into your creative juices, see what needs to be done, and still figure it out.
yeah, I think for my own sake, like in my own workflow, um, I try to find one moment during the day where something that I do just kind of fulfills me.
Right.
And it's not some sort of grand reveal anything. It's just maybe it's a little flower arrangement that I did,
Right.
or maybe it's the way that, we arranged some furniture, and just an interesting little moment.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what keeps you going.
Yeah.
Um, you just look for that little moment, and then it kind of um, it fulfills that need a little bit.
Right.
And when you have to remind yourself to do it, you have to remind yourself to kind of stop and, like, look at what you're doing and kind of think about it in a way that nurtures that part of you.
Right.
Um, and I mean, it happens. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I think always working on things that are not necessarily, what I would particularly do. I'm generally hired to do something I'm generally hired to do someone else's vision.
Right.
Um, and so um, it's pretty frequent that you're not really even doing anything that's like creatively your own.
Right.
But if you just can have this little moment,
Right.
then it's fulfilling in that way.
Yeah.
Um, and I work on that all the time. I mean, sometimes it's just the way you know, um, unwrap the package. I mean,
The
as
thing went
silly as
together
that
cleanly. Yeah.
as silly as that sounds. Um, I think, you're just kind of always looking for that kind of opportunity to nourish that part of you, and it's in there. You just have to find it. And you have to be open to it, right?
Right.
Um, so much of my workflow ends up being this crazy, hectic, not a lot of time. We're running pretty fast and hard to get things done, and there's not a lot of opportunity to really even sometimes um, uh, breathe. So,
Right.
to just slow down for a moment and just kind of look at things and appreciate something, um, is great. And it fulfills me.
Yeah. Yeah. I have found that when the lighting looks good to me, that's what fulfills me in the shoot.
Right. And the lighting is the thing that I honestly love the most about a shoot. Um, I don't do a lot of um, motion work, uh, but I think it applies also in photo, like the gaffer. And I guess in photo, I don't know what position that would be. I mean, sometimes it's a photographer. A lot of times it's a photographer, but other times it's some sort of
Right.
lighting
Right. Yeah. In my case, it's
technician.
usually me.
Right. Yeah. But I see that, like, I see it as painting.
Yeah. Definitely.
I mean, in they say in construction, there's kind of this old funny thing that the carpenters say that the painters always save them, right? Whatever their flaws are, the painters
Yeah.
will take care of the carpenter's flaws. Um, and I think in my world, the lighting always kind of saves me.
Right.
I mean, in if you have good lighting, even if you have a bad set, or not super great looking props, or maybe it wasn't exactly the vision that you had imagined, but for various circumstances, this is kind of where you are.
Right. Right.
If you have good lighting,
Yeah.
I mean, it it doesn't matter. I mean, it's gonna look good.
Right. Yeah.
How many times you see those, like, kind of old master kind of paintings, right? And the context of it really doesn't have, like, at least for me, doesn't really have any sort of, doesn't resonate with me, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, you're looking at like an old Dutch master painting the interior of a church scene, or some sort of historical moment that doesn't
Right.
really, apply to anything that I'm familiar with. But the reason it's interesting is because the lighting is
Right.
impeccable. you
Yeah.
know, and that's what you do. I mean, the lighting is what makes it interesting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And and it's also for me, I'm, you know, taking someone else's vision and, being told recreate this.
Right,
And so I'm in that same boat of, well, I'm going to try and make it interesting for myself.
right,
Or if it's, a crazy image, be like, how can I actually do that? So it's
right,
like you challenge yourself with, the light of how to recreate that light. And I'm sure
right.
it's same similar thing for you. It's like, okay, this is their vision. How can I throw my little spin on some of these items that aren't, the key items that they really,
Yes.
really demand to be in there?
I mean, Helmut Newton has this book called Gun for Hire, and the title of it comes from his this quote about himself that he said, I'm just a gun for hire. Like I just go where I'm paid to go and take, the photos that they tell me to take. Which I think for most people that were in a commercial world, like sure that would apply. I think
Right.
for him, for Helmut Newton, like that's a little bit of like my friend, you're a little bit more than a gun for hire. Like you're a master at this, right? But I think that like I think of that all the time, just in you know what you're doing, and I don't mean to compare myself at all to someone like that, but it's more in the sense of I think about it as well, if you're a person like that that's working on a commission,
Right.
um, there must be a way that you can work on something to just kind of feel just a little bit of that. Well, I'm just going to do it a little bit my way.
Right.
And I'll do what you want, but I'm just going to do a little bit of me. And it's in there a little bit, some places more than others.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I always try and crop according to what it should be, not according to what they want it to be.
Right.
you know, like,
Yeah.
no, this
And
is how
that's
I see it. This is how it should be.
right. That's just a little
Right.
Chad moment right there, right?
And it always looks the best, but they never use them.
Right. But I mean, this is also
But
where
it's
it also
commercial,
gets,
right?
but it's also where it gets into like the subjectivity of it all, right? Like, I mean, I could bemoan the fact that, what I think is best is not always what gets decided on.
Right. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like that's the subjective thing. I mean, my taste is questioned daily, and I think you have to have thick skin to do this job, in that sense. Like
Right.
if you're going to be offended by people not liking your taste, I mean, you probably should do something else.
Yeah.
Um, but what that has also taught me is how subjective it all is.
Right.
The thing that I always think looks good is not the thing that other people think look good. But I mean that's it doesn't really matter. I
Right.
mean, because the end result is a collaborative effort. And if I wanted something to just be what I thought was good, well, then I should just be doing my own personal project. Um, because at the end of the day, it's a collaborative thing, and it's almost like governance and like a democracy, right? Like no
Right.
one's ever going to be totally happy
yeah.
100% of the time. The makeup artist is like, ooh, I really like that angle because it makes the makeup look good, and
Right. Right.
the stylist is like, what about this full frame? And we get to see all the clothes and the shoes. And I'm like, well, guys, if you shoot it wide, you could see the whole
Right.
set. And then the photographer is like, yeah, but I really like this. And the client goes, well, we're gonna look at this.
right.
And, you know, I mean, that's just what it is.
Right.
And so the subjectivity of it, I think, is, another component of it that I don't ever take offense or and always try to understand that my taste is not necessarily what everyone else's is, and
Right.
um, you know I'm just a vessel for what the end goal of it all is.
Right. And I think that, we've all been on those shoots where, everyone was happy. Like
Right.
it's like those are special moments because everyone, felt like their art was seen and the
Yeah.
images look great. And it's like
Yeah.
you feel like you won a victory,
Yeah.
even
No,
though
it's
it,
nice to be validated. Yeah.
yeah. And it's just kind of, not every shoot happens like that.
No.
Most of the time it's like, well, it was cool. I
Yeah.
didn't really like this or like that. But then there's those shoots where everyone's like, man, that turned out really cool.
Yeah.
Lighting was on point, props were on point, style, makeup.
Yeah.
The director was on it, the models were good, and it's like the planets aligning. It's a
And
magical
that's
moment.
that's such a beautiful thing, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's when you do have those, that validation, because I don't think that most of us need that validation,
No.
like to keep going, But I think it's like to have it from your peers, I think is what really makes that's when it feels really good,
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
When people that know say, Chad, that was a great photo.
Right.
And then you're that's better than, everyone else telling me that was great,
Right.
you know.
Right.
I mean, it's probably like in a band, right? Like, the audience is like, that was a great set, and you're like, I thought we played like
Yeah.
crap, you know?
Yeah.
And then like, the next night the drummer comes off and he's like, man, we killed it tonight. And you're like, yeah, I mean,
Right.
yeah, you would know because
Right.
you were there. You were doing it, right? And that's kind of that validation where you go, yeah, that feels good.
Right. Yeah. It's like you feel it down deep in your soul. Like that was
Yes.
a good thing. Um,
Yes. But I think that is something that feels good as a creative to just be able to feel that every once in a while.
yeah.
Not a lot, just, you know, every once in a while.
Yeah.
Again, it's commercial, it's not as artistic as, we would like it to be. So,
Right. Also in the commercial world, I mean, you shoot so much or you do so much. So it's
yeah.
like, you know, it's a benefit in the sense that you can be like, all right, I kind of missed this one, but I have three more lined up. So I'm going to do extra hard on the next one. So
Right.
you're constantly challenged. And then every once in a while you hit the bullseye and you're like, all right, this is why I do this. And then it sets you up for,
Yes.
you know, you probably will fail the next two times, but it's like you're still on that
Yeah.
high and you still can kind of just keep going because you know you can do it.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I don't know what other creative pursuits are like, but I would imagine, I have friends that are painters. I have a couple friends that are painters, and I would imagine there's a moment where you're painting something and you're just going like, this one really isn't it. But at some point you just kind of have to stop and you
Right.
go, it's done. I mean, it's not done, but I'm done with it. But I would imagine that every so often you're painting something and you're just going, I mean, I'm feeling this, you know, and 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 you're in that moment, and yeah, the reward for that is just so um it's so high, there's nothing that really, compares to that, right?
Right. Yeah, I was talking to someone and is almost like, these pursuits are more of an investment in yourself than anything.
Right.
It's like we are pursuing this calling and purpose that we feel tugging on us to do certain things. And we have a unique eye or vision that, suits us for these things. So it's not necessarily that we need the accolades from everyone else, but like when we know we did something good, it's a better high than, some Joe Schmo going, "Oh,
Yeah.
I really like that vase you used." Yeah,
Right.
great, thanks.
Yeah.
But if
Great
you know,
placement.
yeah, but if you know that that was actually a very killer placement and it looked like made the photo unique,
Yeah.
it's like you don't even need to hear that from anyone else because you already know it.
Yeah. And I think too, it's important, I think, as a creative person to have other outlets, And I think most people that do something creative for their job also
Yeah.
have some other sort of creative outlet that nurtures that as well, I'm not an artist, but I have a lot of friends that are artists, a lot of friends that are musicians, these different types of things. And um, the biggest thing that I've learned from all of them is like the artist way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
And I think that that's another way of nourishing that kind of creative part of you that if you're not getting it at your job, you're getting it in another place.
Right.
And the artist's way of seeing the world, I think, is just um, it's not quite third person, but I think it's kind of seeing things with a perspective that's beyond that kind of first person perspective, right? And having friends that see the world that way, and then they kind of show you how they see the world. You
Right.
can't ever kind of go back from seeing the world that way.
Right. Yeah. For good or for bad.
Yes, yeah, it's true. But that insight is kind of what makes that's why art is so moving,
Right.
right? And a lot of things we see these days don't necessarily move us. Um, but every once in a while, you'll see something that just stops you in your tracks, and you go, "Wow!"
Right.
I mean, that's pretty stunning. Um, and I think being able to look at the world through that lens, then you can't ever go back, and that's a really beautiful thing to carry with you everywhere you go.
Right.
And it's almost like a meditation in some way, right? Because it makes you kind of slow down, and
Right.
you go like, oh, look at the way those rocks are piled up over there, or why does that tree look like that?
Right.
No.
Yeah. I'm almost done reading the book Artist's Way.
Hmm.
It's kind of like what is the subtitle? I think it's like Spiritual Guide to Your Artist Child or something. It's kind of I feel like it's kind of new agey. Um
Who
but
who wrote it? Was it an artist or was it
yeah, Julia Cameron, I think.
okay?
I mean, I think this came out like in the late 70s maybe. Like the
Oh, cool.
first um this because I think this was like the 30th edition. It talks about we all have a artist child within us, and the artist child is basically channeling what we are supposed to channel from the creator. You know, they talk about, whatever your higher power is.
Right.
Uh, but it's artists are basically tapping into that channel and that
Hmm.
and then that voice and being able to express it in a form of I mean they touch on like a form of worship because we
Right.
are created to create because our creator is a creator. So by creating ourselves, it's an act of worship.
Right. Is that because the artists feel the world differently, or they see it differently, or all of the?
I think it's I think it was kind of just getting at, we are all unique, created uniquely. So we
Right.
all have a unique perspective. And
Yeah.
if we are open to receive that purpose calling on our lives, we will be fed, what we are supposed to put out,
Right.
kind of a thing.
I mean, it's why I mean, when you look at, artists and musicians and just intensely creative people, there's the word tortured that's used to describe people like
Right.
that, right? But I think um, the Gen Z word would be like empaths, when somebody says they're an empath. Like I think that's actually an applicable word for a lot of creative
Hmm.
people, whether they're musicians or artists or whoever. They're so sensitive to um their surroundings,
Right.
whether it's the sounds or the sight or the smell of it or anything that um they're almost forced to see the world differently, right?
Right. Yeah.
And this kind of is kind of that channel that you're talking
Right.
about. And some people could say that it's something that's more. divine, and then other people would say in a more secular sense that it's something that's more less spiritual but more I don't know, purpose. It comes from a place of purpose, like everyone has a
Right.
purpose. And but however you see that, in the course of human history, we've always had people like that,
Oh
right? I
yeah.
mean, um, and they're able to tap into something that we can't.
Right. Well, I think that's the beauty of it is like everyone has unique talents and gifts, and you know, I can't do a lot of things, but I could do a couple things, and
Yes,
the next person can do the things I can't do, but can't do what I can do.
yes,
So it's like if we so I think kind of what the book is getting at is if we kind of figure out what feeds our souls, gives us purpose, and if we pursue those things, we are all going to have meaningful lives and contribute to society because we are doing the things that we are all meant to do. And
right,
because we're unique, everything will be taken care of because everyone
right.
has special knacks for certain things in their minds, grasp things better than others. And engineers, think much differently than we do on
Hmm.
things. And, the ones who succeed in that, it's because that's just how they were built.
I
And
mean, there's a beauty in what they do.
oh, yeah,
Um,
totally.
you know, um, I mean, there's a beauty in that. I mean, I think that this is the part of being a young person that so many people struggle with, is that idea of knowing your strengths, right?
Right.
And it's something that you only come to, I think, as you kind of age through it. But I actually think that I mean, what you're searching for, what your strengths are.
Right.
And that's why young people are so open to the world, because they're willing to try all these things that as an old person, you're just going like, "Oh, I don't know, that could be hard or cold or tiring or
Yeah, my back's gonna hurt.
yeah, or I got to get up tomorrow or and young people are just so open to that type of thing, but they're not sure of what their strengths are yet, or at least not a
Right.
lot of them, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that there is also, on the inverse side of that, something that's really great about knowing what your strengths are and knowing, okay, I've gotten through that period where I have to try everything just to see,
Right.
here's actually where I've landed, and these are the things that I'm good at.
Right.
And I think it applies to, you know, my job, what I do, but I think it applies to also just the creative way of being, right? Also,
Right.
um, is knowing, you know, this is what I can bring,
Right.
whether it's to a conversation or a dinner party or some sort of collaboration in a person, something in your personal life.
Right.
Being able to offer that is, um, that's like the social animal part of us, right? It's
Right.
that guy's good at hunting,
Right.
you know, this guy's good at getting the fruits out of the tall tree, um, and this guy's really good at starting the fire.
Right.
Okay, well,
Do those things.
everybody do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's that saying, the youth is wasted on the youth, right?
Right.
But, I think you probably had similar experiences, just coming from like the music scene and everything. It's like everyone's just trying to figure out life together. And I think,
Yes.
if you don't have those moments where you're just searching and, figuring it out, that's where your confidence is being built and your wisdom. You need to go through the learning process, right? Because
Yes.
life, I mean, we always come back to, really a life of creation is just a life that is open to the journey of, just living,
Right.
learning. You're open to learn, you're open to try things, you're pursuing your passions, things that feed your soul. And all of that is just, the young may not understand where their strengths are, but their willingness to try different things is opening them up to have this huge amount of life experience that they can then tap into later. Even if, all the mistakes they made
Yeah.
in their youth, they can go back and be like, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes, but this is what I learned from it.
This is actually the thing that I think like social media we've kind of seen recently is kind of starting to be on its decline. I mean, it's not going to end tomorrow, but I think that we've reached the zenith of social media has happened, right? And we're kind of on the downward slope of it.
Right.
And the thing that I like about that the most, beyond the obvious, is that like as a creative person, social media is such a great way to reach people,
Right.
but it also doesn't allow that room for failure, like you're talking about, those like experiments that you do that um, social media encourages everyone to share, and that's the social part of it. And I think that that's an important part of it because,
Right.
so many great creative people have been discovered through it.
Right.
But that ability to fail and that ability to do things and experiment with things kind of um, independently, I think is something that I really mourn a little bit
Right.
um, from social media's influence, um, because that experiment is really that's where you really kind of like new ideas really come from that. You're testing it, you're trying something out, you're workshopping it, you're
Right.
maybe you show it to a friend, but you don't show it to everybody, and your friend's got an opinion on it, or if you're a writer, you let them read the first draft of a story you're working on or something. And I think that the phenomenon of of being a creative person having to share because you're kind of forced into this economy of
Right.
social media, which and I mean the economy of it is not the money part of it, but the economy of like sharing.
Right.
And that if you're not getting um
If you're not getting likes.
yeah, if you're not getting interaction out of it,
Right.
the economy of it isn't working correctly,
Right.
right? And I think all great art and all great creative things was not something that somebody just kind of one off and did it. It's something that, I mean, it took a lot of time. There was
Right.
experimenting. There were these moments of testing. Um, and I think that it's something that I'll be very happy when that's allowed to happen again for creative people. And not that you can't, but I think um, it's much harder to do that, especially
Right.
for a younger person. When you've kind of been reared in this world of, well, you have to get it out there because if
Right.
you're not getting interaction, this gallery is not going to represent you, or that label is not going to sign you, or like
Right.
your story is not going to get published unless you have 10,000 followers or something. And
Right.
I mean, that's it's great to have that sort of reach, but I think, we really should let new ideas gestate a little bit.
Right. Well, and on the flip side of that is, you may have these young artists did something that they're just trying for the first time, post it, and immediately get backlash or ripped apart.
Right.
They may never try it again.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
like
Yeah.
that's could have been their calling and their the thing that brings them the most joy, but because social media ripped them apart or canceled them for,
Yeah.
most of the time an innocent mistake or just,
Yeah.
they're just trying for the first time, and it's like it may have ruined their life early before they even had
Right.
a chance to really do anything.
Well, and I think, from a creative perspective, like, everything has to be nurtured, right? And big ideas, especially new ideas, kind of take time to come out. And not that you can't have that, but I think things don't stick as well if they haven't been tested a little bit, right?
Right.
Um, and I will be happy when a lot of the young creators coming up don't have to rely on that sort of economy to
Right.
reach people, um, and reach an audience.
Yeah. I mean, we were both young. Th- th- thank God that there wasn't social media when I was young, because I probably would have posted really dumb things, and I'm glad they're not out
Yeah,
there.
and I mean also that, that like kind of embarrassing acoustic song you wrote after your
Right.
girlfriend broke up with you or something, that you're like, I'm really glad you didn't put that one out there, or
Hey, it worked
you
for
know,
Olivia Rodriguez.
well, I think that it works for some people, but it doesn't work for everyone, and some
Yeah.
people need a little more practice, right?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Um,
She was pretty
you know,
talented.
um, for sure. I mean, but this is also where you get to this idea of, well, you know, maybe every idea just doesn't need to be put out in the public, you
Right.
know? And I don't mean it from like a current affairs kind of sense. I mean, I'm talking specifically just about the creative ideas here.
Right.
Um, Obviously, we don't need every idea put out into the public.
Yeah.
But creatively, yeah, I mean, maybe, you know, I mean, who knows? Do you get the art movements or the music movements that we had and hold so dear you know, if they were, as you said, just kind of this brief flash in the pan and everybody heard the first Sex Pistols song and went, "Oh my gosh, this is terrible. Don't ever make any more music."
Well, it's funny because I talked to a guy who, is very much into the hardcore scene. He works for a label and stuff, and he's like loves it to death. And he's like, let's be honest, punk music's terrible, hardcore music's
Yeah.
terrible, but I love it. And
Yeah.
so it's like if you just had some like theory nerd heard the first like punk song like you were saying, they would have been like, this is terrible, it doesn't follow
Yeah.
anything, this is trash, they
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing. But
Yeah.
but they kept doing it, and more people caught on to it. I mean, punk and hardcore is also such like a big social just gathering of people who just didn't know what to do with themselves, so they
Right.
started their own thing, and they fit into a crowd, and that's what the crowd produced.
Right. Because it's a little more participatory, but I think like most kind of creative movements are that, right?
Right.
Like, when modern art came out, it wasn't that everyone seeing modern art was an artist. I mean, there were people that were going just because it was scandalous, and they were going, "What
Right.
is
Right.
this?
Yeah.
This guy can't paint. Look at this guy Picasso. Look how he paints a woman. Like, what is this?
Right.
This isn't art."
Right.
And they just came for the scandal of it all,
Right.
right? And for the show. And I think that's a beautiful thing also, that so much of create the creative world is participatory.
Right.
Um, and we need that. That makes it human, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
makes it, you know, um, you can probably train the AI to write punk songs or to write hip hop or to do this or that, but um, there's nothing participatory about that.
Right.
And that's why I don't I think that um there's a moment where those things kind of come, but I don't think they last because I don't think that they're participatory enough for us. I don't think that we, as like social animals, will stand for, you know, a concert where a computer just like rips off new songs, and I don't
Oh,
mean rip off, but like
right,
just
right,
throwing out new songs
right,
left and right. Because I don't think people see that as something that's rewarding to them.
right. I mean, that was always one of my gripes with like EDM and that kind of stuff. I mean, I understand some people, really do create these things, but there's some that are just standing there pushing play, and you're just like, ugh, that's ridiculous. But I think I've learned more about it. But it's like my initial reaction to it was just like, there's no soul in that.
Right.
It's just a guy standing there pushing a button. Where coming from the punk world, where you have everyone just like blood, sweat, and tears on stage, and the crowd,
Yeah.
is all over it, and I don't know. It just the club scene just didn't seem real to me.
I
But
think I think it's probably something though that again is like a participatory thing. Like if your view of it is watching this guy just push a button, then yeah, that's probably not the same experience. But if your view of it is like, oh, like you are like 19 and a bunch of your friends went to see like a real DJ,
right,
you're like, oh, well, yeah, that's an experience
right,
and that's participatory, right?
right, yeah, and I learned that later on, but I remember that was like my first reaction. It's just like,
Yeah.
wait, what? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, that's always our first reaction because it's hard not to be a grumpy old man about a lot of
Hey, this was
things.
this was when I was still young.
Okay.
um,
I mean, I mean, you have to remind yourself all the time. You're like, ah, why don't I like this? And you're like, oh, because it's different.
right,
Like I like things that I like, and
yeah, for sure.
and and it's I think so hard to remind yourself to not just, a gut reaction of well, this isn't real because or I don't like this because this isn't what I know, you
Right, yeah.
know.
It was
Um,
definitely during that phase of I only listened to punk and hardcore.
yes,
So,
which
everything outside of that was trash.
is equally as militant to the people that are like, I only listen to Fish.
Right.
And I think that's fine. It's no judgment on any of those things, but we're probably doing ourselves disservices
Oh yeah, for sure.
by not being open to new things. I mean, I'm not advocating for liking any of the things,
Right, yeah, exactly.
open to it.
I would say one of the best things I did was marry my wife who hates hardcore and punk music
Right.
because it forced me to listen to everything else. But,
Yes.
it was definitely I remember I don't know if it was like a specific time, but I feel like there was definitely this awakening of or the realization of I missed out on a lot of good music because it was outside of my
Yeah.
my world.
Right.
Like looking at old flyers and you're like, I went to that show, and now all of these other bands are my favorite bands, and I did not
Right.
go see them when they were like little bands.
Right. Because it was a different scene that you weren't. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, my parents would only let me go to certain shows too.
But
I,
now wait until your kids grow up
oh my
and
gosh,
then
I'm
they're
terrified.
listening to stuff and you're going, what is this?
Yeah,
And they're like, this is my favorite music. I mean, this is it for me, you
yeah,
know? And you're going, all right, I got to try to understand this because I don't
yeah,
understand it, but I have to understand it through the perspective of, you
yeah.
know, wait, there's a guy and he's spitting on the crowd and everyone's punching each other.
Total
How is
fun,
that fun?
right? I've played my son some of like the CDs or showed him some videos, and they're just like, "That's scary."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, it's not. It's totally fun."
That guy, he dropped his change. He's picking it up.
Yeah, there's like a part of me that is terrified of what music my sons will get into, And then there's like a part of me that's like super excited that they find like their generation's like underground scene.
Yes.
And I want to be like, I'm taking you to the shows because I want to go too. But
I am reminded all the time that as much as I may despair about what creative things are coming out now, um, the same could be said for when I was a young person.
yeah, for sure.
And I think that we're better for everything that I liked. And, I would say that we're going to be better for everything that these kids like.
Right,
That doesn't mean that I will like it,
right.
but I'm reminded all the time, you know, especially, you know, with a child around who's always got new ideas or different things that they're interested in, um, how important it is to keep an open mind about those things, which isn't always easy
Yeah,
because, your first gut reaction is, what is this?
yeah,
But, I watched the LA Fires benefit concert, and half of the probably artists at the one stadium, I had no idea who they were. I'd never even heard of them.
yeah.
Um, but they were good. I mean, they were good musicians. It's not the music that I would choose to put on,
Right.
um, but their talent was there. Um, and they were good singers, they were good musicians, um, and I feel like the kids are all right, Chad. I'm not worried about the kids.
Yeah,
The problem is I just haven't been listening to the right stuff to stay up on what the kids are doing. Because every
right.
once in a while, when I hear what the kids are doing, I go, "Oh, but yeah, we're fine. It's gonna be fine."
Or
You
you
know,
go, oh yeah, they're screwed.
I mean, they're screwed, but yeah, I mean, they're definitely screwed.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, all that stuff that's coming out of the UK, like musically, um, it started with that band Idols, and then they've
hmm,
kind of blown up. But like, there's like this whole scene of kind of, I don't know what you would call. I mean, it's some sort of post-punk, right? But it's
right.
it's
Post
it,
hardcore or something.
yeah, but it's not really indie. It's not really punk. I mean, it's something. It's postmodern something.
Right,
But all of that is amazing. I mean,
right.
that whole scene is, I mean, if you go down the rabbit hole on some of those bands, if you just start with Fontaines DC and kind of go down the rabbit hole of all the bands that are kind of below them in terms of popularity, there's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah,
Um, it's amazing. We just don't have enough time to, listen to it.
right. I mean, are you, I'm almost to the point of I feel like I've listened to music so much, over my life that I almost just prefer silence most of the
Yeah,
time. My
yeah,
family doesn't like the punk hardcore stuff, so I don't play those records at home.
yeah,
So it's just kind of like silence is golden almost at this point because
yes.
it's nice.
It depends on what I'm doing. If I've had a particularly long day, sometimes, you know, my day can be 14, 15, 16 hours. I will get in the car and I will start driving home and not realize that there's nothing on until I'm halfway home.
Right.
And it didn't bother me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think
Definitely.
if I'm working, like if I have to work from home, if I'm on the doing kind of office work, um, or if I am doing something around the house or some sort of project or something, I will just put something on just to have something on.
Yeah.
Even if it's, regardless if it's something that I've never heard or something that I've heard 1,000 times,
Right.
I just will put something on just to have something on. Because I do like background noise and I do think that it helps kind of keep the flow going.
I remember, my dad was a music teacher. I remember he would whenever he had a chance, just sit on the couch, turn up some classical music or, something that he's wanting to listen to. And he would just sit in front of the speakers, like
Hmm.
eyes closed, and just zone out in it. Half the time I'm like, Dad, Dad, are you awake? He's like, Yes, I'm just trying to listen to the music right now. you know? But it's like, it was cool looking back on it now and understanding like he was feeling the music.
Yeah,
And that was kind of like what, recharged him. I think,
right.
especially as a music teacher for elementary school,
Oh yeah,
he needed those recharges pretty often.
yeah, yeah,
Take him back to why did it in the first place.
yeah. I mean, and I mean that probably goes with what we're saying also, right? Just that little hit
Yep.
of something just to kind of keep you going. As a creative person, I think is, yeah, I mean that's what he's getting. He just needed a little bit, put on the tracks for 10 minutes just to hear it
Yeah.
and feel it. I mean, I do that in the car a lot. I will put on something that I haven't heard in a long time just to check and see if it's still good
Right.
or if I'm just nostalgic for it, you know?
Right.
Um, and I won't say the things that I've put on to check to see if it's still good or not that aren't still good.
Right.
I will tell you the things that are still good. Led Zeppelin 2 is still good. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon is still good. Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions is still good. Some of the other things, not still good. And I've discovered that I'm just nostalgic for them and I should probably just, only put those on when I'm in the car by myself.
Yeah. I think everyone has those albums. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I just recently found out that one of the guys helping my son's little league team is in like a pretty like crazy heavy death metal band.
nice.
And so I'm like, oh, I gotta check this out.
Yeah,
I mean, it's heavier than the stuff I listen to, and I listen to some pretty heavy stuff. But it made me like go, oh, I want to go back and listen to the bands that were similar to that I listened
right.
to growing up, and then I just got into like a full metal, just
Yeah,
download, ride back to the past, and I've actually been enjoying it. It's been great.
yeah. I every once in a while will put on just some like very heavy metal when no one's home and just let it shake the windows.
Yeah,
It's only happened once or twice where someone's come home. My friend was living with us for a while, and he came home once when I had on Dope Smoker I mean, to 11. I had it
nice.
cranked, and he walked in and just said, "What are you doing?" Vibing to some sleep, man. Just working from home.
Right.
Just got it cranked.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta let it out sometimes.
Yeah, and that feels good.
Yeah. I listen to a lot more mellow stuff now and I play a lot more mellow stuff now just because I don't have a band and
Yeah,
I can only play when the kids are asleep, so it's usually acoustic stuff. But man, putting on a like one of my favorite punk bands or something,
yeah.
it still resonates and hits me in the sweet spot every time.
I do have to say though, as I've gotten older, I do really appreciate melody a
Yeah, yeah,
lot
for sure.
more. Like it really is nice to have some melody. Um,
Some
it makes a
intonation. Yeah.
it makes a big difference.
Right. And I mean that goes back to punk is not really good music,
No,
but
no.
it hits in a spot that no other music can.
Yes. Um, I sometimes wonder with punk music though, like if you removed the like age where everyone gets into it, is it at all as popular? like as it became, you know? Like if you discovered punk at, you know, 25 instead of 13, you know, is punk at all as popular as it
I guess it.
is or was?
I guess it would depend on what I was listening to at 13.
Right. I mean, it's just like I remember hearing punk for the first time at 13, and then by 14 was just completely like it just resonated with me
Yeah.
completely. But um, is that just because that's that age? You know, I mean, if it was much later, does that resonate with me in the same way? I'm not sure.
I think if it was for me, if it was later, I'd probably gravitate more towards like Gaslight Anthem
Yeah.
or, probably Blink 182 would hit me a little better than it did when it first came out because they have some songwriting ability and, like you said, melodies and catchy and
Well, and this kind of brings me to like my journey, which was like started out listening to No Effects and like that kind of
right,
stuff, and then kind of moved into like Black Flag and then kind of was introduced to like, you know, I guess more like newer hardcore. Um, and then discovered indie, you know, when I was in college, and then was like, oh, I think I like Built to Spill a lot more than, you know, DRI or you know, uh, Anti-Flag or something, you know, like like all of a sudden indie was just like I was like this is a lot cooler.
right.
This guy solos for 10 minutes, you know?
But I think there's like, because you have experienced the others, you see the difference and you can kind of
Right,
go and most of those people all came from the punk hardcore scenes most of the time.
right, yes.
So it was
Well, and
like,
that brings me to this idea of like, does punk even have the popularity that it had if it's not for angry young people?
I don't know, the older you get, the angrier you get.
Yeah, but culturally you're not as
Yeah.
invested in it, you
And
know?
and you can't mosh. So,
And the impetus for being angry when you're old is that everything's changing, and when you're young, nothing is changing.
right.
So that's your anger is coming from a different
Right, yeah.
place, you know?
I think too is like, I know you played an instrument too early on, and it's kind of like, as a beginning fledgling musician, you can't go play these crazy indie licks
Yes.
and stuff, but you can play kind of fast two
Yeah.
different chords. So you're like,
Yes.
so you started punk band. So it's like,
Yes.
it's almost like you could see it in the bands where it's just kind of like they started here, just jumped into a band right away, and that's all they could play. And then you can see as they progress in their lives, they get better and better. And then, I mean, look at like the DC scene where it's like go Minor Threat to Embrace to Fugazi, and just like builds up musically because they keep going with their passion and their pursuit.
Right.
And it's, I mean, really, and we'll probably end this video here and move on to the next. But punk is basically the um, layout of living a life of creation. You just have to start wherever you're at, right?
Right.
You may suck. You're just figuring it out, but you just do it because you feel called to do it. And then you just
Yes.
keep pursuing it. You keep learning. You keep growing as you go, and then you eventually, are a crazy talented musician because you just kept pursuing your art wherever you were at the time.
Yes. And I think, yeah, punk as an idea absolutely is that path. Um, and it's a sense of fearlessness.
Right.
And I think that is the beautiful thing about it. There's just no fear. I mean, you fail. I mean, so what? You don't know how to do it anyway.
Right. And I mean, to tag on to that, it's also, you're building your confidence level.
Right.
No one expects perfection from a punk band.
No.
So it's like if you suck and you can only do a couple things, but you jump around and be crazy,
Yeah.
dude, you're gonna be a rock star in the punk
Yeah.
world. But it's like, but that then boosts your confidence to keep pursuing and keep going.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great metaphor for it for sure. I I guess maybe coming from that punk world, you're kind of, yeah, you're already shown the path,
Right.
you know? It definitely it suits you up for it for sure. Um, and I think a sense that confidence is also a sense of, not caring what other people think.
Right.
Um, and I mean that in the creative sense, right? I mean with the punk metaphor. You're just, well, I don't really care what people think.
Right.
I'm not good at this anyway, so I mean, you know, I'm gonna try, and if it's not good, well, I mean,
Who cares?
whatever. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Right. I mean, that's the whole ethos of punk anyway, right? Is like, F you,
Yeah,
I'll do what I want.
right. And then you kind of, you do that for a while, and then you're like, all right, well, I actually do need to make a living at this. So like,
Right.
how do I do that?
And then you actually do realize that you do care and you actually want to learn and grow as a, doing pursuing something.
Yeah, well, I mean, because of course, because I think, I mean, the the journey is the learning, right? I mean, it's so cliche, but I mean, if you're not learning, you're dying, and it
Right.
really is. It really is true, though. I mean, if you're not open to learning something new or trying something new, then I mean, what's the point? Um, you really should be allowing yourself the freedom to grow in that way.
Right.
And if you do, I mean, I think most people are surprised at the results.
Right.
Um, it's just a side of everyone's brain, I think, and kind of going back to talking about, everyone kind of has some part of them that has some sort of creative component that's just not nurtured as much, right?
Right.
And if you're open to it, then you know it will happen. I will be the first to admit that I don't know everything about what I do. I know very little. Um, but my biggest strength is not being afraid to learn. Um, and also, I tell people that work for me this all the time. Not being afraid to ask questions when I don't know.
Right.
And I think a lot of times people um, that happens to them, that they say, "Well, I don't know anything about this," and I'm kind of nervous. And um, I think when you are willing to ask questions and you show a sincerity and wanting to learn something or learn how something works, people are willing to show you.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, it's only when you bring your own kind of preconceived ideas or something that maybe that doesn't work out that
Right.
way. And I mean, my favorite part of what I do is you generally learn how to do something for a particular project and then never do it again.
Right.
And but that's kind of, there's something kind of amazing in that, right? There's almost like this weird philosophical, you know, Buddhist Siddhartha, you know, letting go
Right.
to that you just go, well, we don't really know, but we're gonna learn, and we're gonna try, and we're gonna figure it out, and then we do, and then we go, wow, that was great, and then we don't ever do it ever again. But that's what's beautiful about it. And I think if you're open to that, then the path will be shown for you. And I think just in my creation story, you know, I have so many friends that are artists and creative people that I really don't consider myself to be one because they're the people that I know are just so much more talented than me. And
Right.
it's not self-deprecating. It's just like I see what they do and I go, oh my gosh, I could never do that.
Right.
So um, I think that in my sense of you know a creative story, I've just been very fortunate to learn from people that are more talented than me.
Right.
Um, and I think if you're willing to kind of not have an ego about it and willing to let people know that you're willing to do that, you can learn a lot. And I've been really fortunate to have worked for a lot of people who showed me those things.
Right.
And I wouldn't be where I'm at today without that. And I was very fortunate to have those opportunities because it's such an education
Right.
learning from people that know so much more than you. It's a great it's a great path, and I'm incredibly fortunate to have had that path. I mean, I started in New York City 19 years ago and had no idea that I would still be doing this.
None of us did, right?
No, not at all. But yeah, happy to be here. Happy to still be here.
Just thinking, I was like, this may open up another, lengthy conversation, but I feel like what you do is such a unique field. How did you
Yes.
even get into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those careers that I think it's so small and it's so niche that there's very few people that actually, want to do this career that go to school and they are in art school or they're in theater school and they're like, I want to be a set designer
Right.
or a production designer. I mean, some people do, but there's not a lot of those people. I think, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say, maybe there are more than I know, but I think a lot of people that I know were creatives of some type. They went to art school or they did something and they
Right.
kind of found this world. Um, and they were able to apply the skills that they had being some other type of creative to this world.
Right.
Um, and I think in my sense, I moved to New York City and I had a skill set of knowing how to use tools. I'd moved to New York from the South. I had gone to high school and college in the South. And you kind of just learn to do things through osmosis down there. I don't remember someone teaching me how to use certain tools, I mean, I remember my dad teaching me how to use a drill, but it wasn't like he showed me how to, you know, build a shed or something.
Right.
Um, you kind of just learn through osmosis down there. And then living in New York City, if you have that type of skill set, that's an asset. Um, and there's so many creative people there and such a need for people that have kind of a varied skill set. But I really just fell into it. I met a few people that worked in this world and they took me under their wing. They liked me. They were, willing to hire me. Um, I don't know, or maybe they just saw me as another sucker right off the boat. I don't know. Because sometimes it wasn't very fun. But I had people kind of take a chance on me, even though I kind of was a fish out of water and didn't know anything. And I was an assistant for a long time. I mean, I worked for other people um, for a long time. I saw kind of all angles of the job. I had a friend that worked at a big set shop in New Jersey, and they would do they would build sets for Fashion Week. So I did some of that for a little while. I worked for set designers and prop stylists for a long time. I tried to learn. a lot of different areas of this job because I knew that I didn't have the educational background to do the job. And learning this job from all those different angles gave me the ability to kind of be able to do the job as far as being capable. But no one can really teach you how to, pitch in a meeting or to do proper estimates or to handle client relations. It really is the type of thing that I think you are either cut out for or you're not.
Right.
Um, and so much of what this job is instincts. And all the people that I learned from who are really, really good at this had great instincts.
Right.
And that's really what gets you through it. I mean, that of course comes from repetition,
Right.
but it's all your instincts. It's all feelings. It's all that looks pretty good, but I don't really know. So this doesn't look right. Let's take it all apart and let's redo it. Something's missing here. What is that? Let's try to figure that out. The paint's just a little bit off. Um, I don't know why, but something's not right. And you try to think of every scenario before, um, you're almost like a pessimist,
Right.
imagining the worst case scenario. But through that, you're able to envision kind of everything happening, and that really helps train your instincts.
Right.
Um, so that when you're put in certain situations where things have to change or there's some minor crisis um, that could ruin the day, you just trust your instincts.
Right.
Um, and it's like the one part of this job that I rely on every hour of every day is you have to trust your gut. And sometimes it's wrong, but the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Right.
And all the people that are really good at this, every single one of them have great instincts.
Right.
You just and it's you can't teach that. You just
Right.
have to do it.
Right.
Um, there's no way. There's no class you can take. There's no on the job training. I mean, it is kind of on the job training, but it's just doing it.
Right. Yeah, I see that in the the photo world. There's the saying is like can't teach someone how to have the right eye for it.
Yes. No.
Have been around enough photographers that never really amounted to anything because it's like their photos are fine, but there's just nothing special
Yeah.
about it.
It's not interesting.
Right. And I think it comes down to they just don't have an eye that people want to see through.
Yeah. I
Sad
think
as that,
that's
as harsh as that is, but it's just
no, I
like,
mean, I and I think it's something you can learn, but I think you have to be willing to learn it, right?
right. I mean, you can train your eye for sure, but
Yes.
you kind of actually have to have the eye already that you can then just hone.
Yes. I think in my case in particular, I don't think that I ever had a good natural eye, but I was able to train it
Right.
and to get a pretty good one through training it and through looking, you have to be looking all the time.
Yeah.
You're constantly looking and you're just looking at everything and seeing everything and by looking you're able to really train it and you see things that you like and you don't like or you say look at the way the stools are stacked over there, like that's really interesting, right? And I think that this applies to the photo analogy that you're making. I mean, 10 photographers could take the same picture of a plant,
Right.
and there's only one Robert Mapplethorpe that's able to make it just like you just feel the emotion coming out of this thing. And because we're not doing fine art, I think you can teach yourself that.
Right.
It can be taught. I think if you were doing something that was like museum quality art or something, then that's a different story. But I think, I do advertising. So, I think that you can learn that. It
Right. Yeah.
can be achieved, but you have to stick with it. You have to be willing to not do a good job and look at it and know what how could that have been better,
Right.
But there is probably some element of naturally just being able to see things in a certain way that, I mean, probably is helpful. I think, again, I've just been fortunate that I've been able to know a lot of good artists, and so that helps too,
Right. Yeah. Trust
because
their eye.
you gotta borrow, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're borrowing all the time, right? And I'm not saying you're borrowing, taking someone's art or anything, but you're borrowing their eye.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and photographers do it all the time,
Yeah.
you know, but photographers do it more than anybody actually. And I think, if you're not doing that, if you're not being, oh, let me look at it this way, then
Right.
you're not putting yourself in a position to do good work. I mean, how often have you tried to shoot in someone else's style and you're like, well, like let me just try it real quick,
No, I only do
Um,
my style.
yeah, like everyone,
Yep.
they just do their
It's all
style.
me.
Yeah,
It's all me.
yeah, it's all me. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, but this is also, I think, that's another important component of it too, though, right? Is that you do have to start developing your own
Right.
style,
Right.
which is a totally different thing.
Right.
And I mean, that's kind of always a work in progress, also, right? I mean, I think I personally have had a long road developing my own personal style as far as the type of work I do. And it's not always good. And so you get to refine it and you keep refining it. And you keep refining it until you find that style that works for you in your eye. And
Right.
then you just hope that other people like that.